This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
In a world of capes and lunatics, gods and monsters, one group of men, women, aliens, inhumans,
robots,
time travelers. Yes, robots too. Well, androids are standing at the ready to defend you. They are the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Enough said.
Yes. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is a dark day. I am your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Oh, my goodness. Mozz, this is the final episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Ever.
7 seasons, 13th episode, What We're Fighting For. The final fight against the Chronicoms begins. A familiar face returns. A director, of course, he started, he's going to end it. Kevin Tancherian. Stanley and Jack Kirby, they got those Marvel Based On credits. This whole thing, this was created by Joss Whedon, Jed Whedon, and Marissa Tancherian. You know what? You know who wrote this?
Who?
Jed Whedon himself.
Ooh. Joss Whedon wrote the last one?
Joss Whedon worked on the last one. Wait, who's our director? Kevin Tancherian.
Oh, okay. Is he related to Melissa Tancherian?
Marissa, yeah, I guess must be her brother. Man, it's like everyone's family here. I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of everyone in Hollywood, but apparently the Whedons and the Tancherians have built an empire through marriage that will dominate television for seasons to come. Mark my words. But Jed Whedon, that's Marissa's husband. He did the written by. That hardworking man, that poor hardworking Mark Leitner.
Jed Whedon is Marissa Tancherian's husband?
Yes.
Oh wow, how cool.
Yeah. So essentially, Joss got the deal. Jed and Marissa pitched the idea. Joss said, "Yeah, sounds good, man. I'll be the executive producer. You guys can do it too."
How cool!
Because Joss is the boss, and yeah, Jed's his little brother. So But anyway, Mark Leitner, he's our story editor, and of course, Mark Leitner, we're not gonna say he doesn't work hard. The man is a hard working man, but the hardest working man in show business, once again. Our executive story editor, that's how he got that E in front of his name, is George Kitson. All right, so this is it, man. This is the end. This is the end.
My friend.
But not the end of Nuff Said. Let me just make this perfectly clear. We did a double dose of Nuff Said here with me and Mozz this week. We're going to keep on doing over on our other thing, Full Stream Ahead. But Nuff Said will continue on, and we'll talk about our nice little tie-in to it at the end of this episode. But this episode, man, so Fitz is back, and immediately things start to go wrong. Because he really expected them to bring back Cora, but they left Cora behind. And they said, no, Cora was really important. This was the key. And so immediately they have to improvise. But this is this thing. So when we deal with time travel, essentially what you're, and I would try to touch on this last week, but I kind of think I didn't get my whole thought out there. You build out this idea that you go back in time and it causes a branch. Now, if you once you create that branch, you can start to extrapolate what is the most probable outcome from that branch.
Hmm.
But the closer you get to the moment, the more probability collapses. Which means that, yes, this is the most probable outcome, but it's sort of like, so, and one way to think about it is maybe like lottery numbers. So, as you may know, every lottery ticket you ever buy has the potential to be a winner, but only one of them will be.
Hmm.
And the closer you get to the moment that all the numbers are drawn, the less likely it is any given outcome will be the real outcome.
Right.
So as you approach this moment, you may have planned out everything up into this moment, but once we get there, something may have fallen off. That there were all these plans on what is the most likely scenario, and we even hear that when Sybil is just discussing why it's important for Daisy in the last episode to connect with Simmons, because she is much more likely to remember Fitz if she connects with Simmons. But they're looking at a specific outcome of probability rather than rather than finding an endpoint and working towards it, they're looking at all the different possible points, all the different things they want to have happen in a perfect outcome. But of course, as Princess Leia said to Grand Moff Tarkin, the tighter you grip your fist, the more star systems will slip through your fingers, because they're like grains of sand. As you know, Darth Vader hates sand because it gets everywhere. That was a weird little callback that I just realized was kind of supposed to be there, though I don't think anyone noticed it up until just this moment.
Nice.
Skywalkers and sand. But anyway, so the thing is that everyone had plans of what was going to happen. All of their plans have ganged to none. Every plan they had has fallen apart. And even Sybil calls this out when Nathaniel says, "Oh, we've already destroyed S.H.I.E.L.D. We're good." And Sybil says, "No, the one thing I know about these people is they always beat the odds." It doesn't matter how likely the outcome I predicted is, these guys subvert it. Let's hear it for protagonist armor.
Right. What she doesn't realize is that the actual game being played is that the dimension she's in isn't even real. It's a TV show where the odds are always stacked against you, no matter what you think.
That's the sad truth. Well, but one can imagine if there is order in the universe. That's always that question. It's like, is there order in the universe? Is there something that makes things happen for a reason? Or, as the old saying goes, everything happens for the reason. Sometimes the reason is that you're an idiot. But still, that is a reason. And it comes into this weird question of, well, if there is a reason for everything that happens, what does that mean when you have someone seeking to do great evil? And this is one of these weird questions about counterfactuals, where it's like, you take a person like Donald Trump, who objectively, is, and by the way, sorry, political references here, objectively is doing bad for the country, but is doing it in such a way that is actually causing people to unite against him because they don't like what he's doing. And within that concept, it is this idea that, if people say, that in that counterfactual, in a world where someone was just as evil as Donald Trump, but was more competent at it, A, would they have accomplished as much towards what his plans were? And B, would they have accomplished more because they weren't seen objectively as evil? If someone can argue their point better which, for what it's worth, that is the advantage of Donald Trump, is he is not good at making his points. He's very bad at it. Where I can, and that's the thing, is like, I think a lot of more mainstream Republican politicians throughout the years have been much better at saying, here is what we're trying to do. Here is why this or that or the other is a bad thing. And they would get a significant number of people to say, you know what, I can follow their train of logic. I'm willing to see where this goes. I'm willing to see what happens next, That's the thing, is like, the Republicans tend to do what they call across-the-board tax cuts, which means everybody has their taxes lowered. Now, they always wind up lowering the taxes far more for the top than the bottom, but the bottom doesn't really concern themselves with the top. They just concern themselves with the fact that, oh, hey, I got an extra $50. And if you're living hand to mouth, an extra $50, that's a lot of money. So you can make this argument pretty strongly, and Republicans had for generations. That Donald Trump is there and is making arguments so poorly is arguably poisoning the entire Republican Party to the point that they may not do well after this point. That after this point, they are going to be kind of like the Democrats after the Civil War, where all Republicans had to do was, as they said, would wave the bloody shirt. That there was enough bad press around the Democrats that they could not hold public office for, at least on a major level, for decades. And I kind of feel Donald Trump is the bloody shirt of the Republicans, where he is this guy who years from now is going to get referenced as, yeah, that's that guy who did bad. And when we look at this in a grand scheme of things, say, well, gee whiz, if someone better at the job had been there who was maybe just as evil, would they have done far more lasting damage to the world? And then you can ask, is there something more going on here where there is an arc of history that is bending towards justice, and sometimes we have to be reminded of how bad we are for us to reject it. I've often said this about other people throughout history, where I said, if we didn't have that moment where we got to see that is just how bad we can be, we would not overcorrect towards justice in the next generation. Mm-hmm. What's your question, Tristan?
If Galactus eats a planet, does that mean no life will be able to inhabit it?
Yeah, well, not necessarily, but generally speaking, yes. Usually when Galactus eats a planet, it destroys the entire planet. The planet blows up at the end. There are a few times where he has simply taken the life force from that planet, and then people have been able to return the life force to that planet. That was what happened to Zenla eventually.
Maybe he doesn't, so there's leftovers.
Well, no, but what happened with Zenla was, so essentially what happened is Zenla, because after the Silver Surfer betrayed Galactus, he eventually said, you know what, I know where Zenla is, I'm going to go to Zenla, I'm going to eat it, but I'm not going to destroy it. And he just sucked the life out of it. And then Mantis, the Celestial Madonna, was able to come to Zenla and restore it with life force. And that was a whole plot line in a whole other set of books. But anyway.
So Galactus was going to be good?
Well, no, that was back when Galactus was still just a force of nature. And Galactus is still always a force of nature. Galactus should never be seen as good or evil. He is always just a force of nature.
What about the life regurgitator? Is he still a force of nature?
He would be a force of nature too, but he's just the opposite force of nature. He is the force that would breathe life into things rather than that would absorb life from them.
Galactus was made with hunger, so there wouldn't be too many planets.
Well, arguably that's the force of entropy. There's this question of, is the universe pre-designed to always move towards entropy, or might it someday evolve to a point where it can be sustainable and it will not always fall into entropy, but could be a sentient eternity that goes on for infinity? Yeah. So that's that question. That's okay. It's always a good interruption. I hope Mozz was able to hear some of those.
Yeah, no, I was, and I was fascinated by it too.
Yeah, well, he's a smart kid.
Indeed.
And that's the thing. And although we haven't gotten to Galactus yet, and really, they say they bump up against the Marvel Universe. They do bump up against. They go to the quantum realm. They use these time bubbles.
And they have the Ant-Man mask.
They have the Ant-Man mask. And although, there's a part, I'm trying to remember this.
But they definitely had, like, the dollar store Ant-Man mask.
Yes. Interestingly enough, I believe this is pre-Infinity War. Or at least pre-Endgame. That's right, this is pre-Endgame. This is post-Infinity War, pre-Endgame. If I'm remembering my years correctly. So Avengers,
I think so, yeah, I think you're right,
Endgame is 5 years out. This is like at most 1 or 2 years out from Infinity War. So this is essentially, oh wow, that makes for an interesting turn of events. So we'll get to that at the end of this. Now that I do the math on this, it's like, oh, that's why Mac was there. And yet we can also use the other guy too. Although I'm hoping not, and I'll get to that because that is actually my favorite scene in this whole episode, and this whole series. When we get to the chairs at the end, but in the meantime, we've got to save the day, and essentially they figure out. So they realize, oh, we got to get back up to the spaceship because, oh, by the way, we completely overlooked this in the last episode, which I loved, which was when they decide how they have to break out of the ship after they've disabled like 6 Chronicoms. They essentially tie the Chronicoms to the rockets because they were, hey, Chronicoms blow up real good, don't they? It's like, yeah, they sure do.
Yeah, and he just was referencing the episode that we just did a little while ago, where the Chronicom blows up trying to blow up the satellites. Or trying to launch the satellites. Exactly,
because that's cool. Yeah, so they realize they have to, because first off, they have to get Cora back, because Cora is essential to the plan. Because there's a plan, Fitz has it, and explains now, here's the real question. I kind of got almost immediately that Deke's mom was the important piece of this, as that's what we're fighting for.
Right.
Did you get that immediately? Because I got some people who didn't quite on Twitter who didn't quite get that Deke's mom was what was going on. Because that's that little blonde girl at the end.
Right. I mean, because if they're his grandparents, they're obviously creating. And then when she says, "Oh, we'll see him, soon," and we're like, "Oh yeah, because you're gonna, be grandparents to him."
Well, eventually. Well, if she meets the right guy, and
yeah.
If that is a fixed point, if those two meeting is a fixed point, and Deke being born is a fixed point, well, this would be a Deke that then. So
if the little baby girl doesn't meet the right guy, we don't get Fitz, and it throws everything off, and then we're back.
We don't get Deke, yeah.
So, but if we don't get Deke, isn't he an important piece of this puzzle? No, because Deke
is a time travel duplicate.
Oh, fair enough. So he can't erase himself if she doesn't. But doesn't he say, "I cease to exist if you guys don't do it"?
Well, no. I mean, I think he said that he's worried about that as a possibility, but there's no reason for him to, because he's already gone back in time before he was born and prevented the event that created him. So he's still working on some Back to the Future timeline thoughts. And I get why it would be a worry. It's one of these things like, it is probably, it's sort of like, when you worry about, oh man, I hope I don't go to hell for that. You may not necessarily even believe in hell, but it's like, but man, that would suck if it was real, wouldn't it? Yeah. And so I think that's kind of what we're looking at there. As it breaks down, it's but that is that's the woman who will be Deke's mom, and right now she's like a little 8-year-old kid, so we shouldn't even consider that. But in the future, in the distant future, she may one day meet someone, fall in love, and have a little Deke, and that would be cool. But the odds of that happening maybe are absolute, or maybe are infinitely improbable. But that's true of any of us ever coming into existence, and yet we are all here. So Deke's the one who realizes that, oh, it's create this quantum bubble. It says, no, the point is that, it says, no, that's a perfect metaphor for it. Because if we can expand this quantum bubble, because essentially there's this problem where they're like, well, we can go back to our own timeline. And it's like, we don't want to go back to our own timeline. There are people here about to be attacked. We can't just abandon them. And Deke's the one who comes up, well, why don't you all just go to your timeline? And that will solve the problem. Because we've got that GPS. Now, here's what's interesting about this entire thing. Because as we know from the end of that, what's left of S.H.I.E.L.D. looks at Deke as the new guy in charge. Deke is the super tech guy. Deke now also has time travel technology.
Right.
Suggesting, fan theory, when we get to Loki, when we get to the Time Variance Authority, we will see Deke again.
Oh, that'd be cool.
It is my belief that Deke, maybe not even Deke himself, but maybe it's like, my great-grandfather founded the Time Variance Authority. His name was Deke Shaw. However they're going to play it, but I do feel that is absolutely where we're going with this. I don't doubt that for a minute. But anyway, so they do travel to the future. There's this was the one scene I didn't like. Is Daisy, quote unquote, sacrificing herself to defeat Nathaniel, and then the ship blows up and she's floating in space, and then they scoop her up.
Right, exactly. At least if you're going to kill her off, give us a moment to feel her death and lament her death and grieve for her, and then, they bring her back. Let that moment settle. Let that moment have its time so we can actually appreciate getting her back. But no,
give her something that is why she survived. So, like,
right.
When they have, like, the little bubble masks, when what's his name? The blue hair, the blue guy gives Chris Pratt the bubble mask, so that he can breathe.
Yondu?
Yeah, Yondu. It's like, have like, this is why she's surviving, instead of just having her floating there and maybe like just exhaling and closing her eyes and hoping to get caught in time. Which, yes, I know technically she could do. That, it's not an immediate death when you get thrown into a vacuum. She probably knew to exhale and to close her eyes and to just get pulled into it. But it's a little weird when that happens. So, but yeah, so they do manage to defeat the Chronocoms, and I love how they do defeat them. Because it is just this idea of, no, we're not going to defeat them by blowing them up. That we're not going to have that kind of firepower. But you know what? They're just robots that can be reprogrammed. And if we give them empathy, then they're not going to necessarily want to kill us. They could actually just live your life with us, man.
I know, but that's such, like, patchouli, stinking, hippie, convenient, idealist version of,
friendship is magic.
I know, but like all this,
okay.
She just sticks her hand in there because she takes her superpower and projects it onto them, and all of a sudden these robots, and they don't know, like, okay, Daisy and all of them don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what has happened. They look up at the sky and they come back, "Hi, buddy. I'm not afraid of you anymore. How you doing? Who's a good boy?"
Well, not for nothing. Yes, who's a good boy? Well, essentially what they've established, and this is actually a very interesting aspect of this, because essentially what they've established is now we have full-on LMDs that aren't evil, that can essentially have some sense of sentience, even being a sentient race of beings, which is kind of cool to have living amongst us. Although, obviously, in a secret government operation, so that it's not like we're going to tell everyone, aliens.
Like, if they're going to sit there and make him say, Enoch's catchphrase, "as we have always been," let Enoch have something to do with that. Don't make it like a silly Deus Ex Machina kind of thing,
No, because the point is to say that that's default programming. And it is this idea that it is the default programming of this group, you know?
Yeah, but that's not what they said. They said, oh, all of a sudden they can feel happiness and love.
No, first off, what they said was they could feel empathy.
Ugh.
And that's the thing. Enoch had learned to feel empathy. Enoch had learned to not see Enoch had essentially learned to not just be a watcher, but to realize that there were other things.
Yeah, but those were acquired, patterns of behavior. Those were acquired feelings.
Yes, it
you
was
can't
a lifetime of
reboot the computer and all of a sudden the computer loves you.
Except it's a computer. If it's an AI, if it's a program, all you have to do is give it the program.
Yeah, but they didn't give it the program. They just felt at it. It was
but that may be all you need to do, because that's the idea.
I don't know.
The other Chronicoms learned to emulate Phil. So they learned how to use contractions and to make jokes and to be cute. And essentially they basically all of that knowledge that they've accumulated, they say, well, this is how it could work. This is how Chronicoms work. And this is what they could do. And we know that May is going to have these empathy powers. And this idea of empathy is it's a weird thing to just say, know that other people exist. And for what it's worth, that is the actual thing that differentiates humans from most other creatures.
Sure.
Or at least as we can tell. And certainly what differentiates us from robots. Not that we can observe other things, but that we can understand that other things have their own internal life. And that idea that a robot could understand that, I'm sure you've seen Short Circuit.
Yeah.
Classic film. And, when he crushes the grasshopper and the girl explains to him, no, you've disassembled him. And he's like, no, reassemble. It's like, you can't reassemble something that was alive because it's dead now.
Right.
And that's when Johnny Five realizes, don't disassemble me, I'm alive. If you disassemble me, I won't be alive anymore. And understanding that thing that he crushed was also alive, that's the connection that makes humanity. And so this idea that and for what it's worth, when he says, as we are your friends, as we have always been, that is essentially the point, is that they reprogrammed them to remember, to believe they remembered that that this is in their programming. Their programming now says you have empathy and you recognize other beings as alive. And that is the power of being alive. That is the power of seeing another human being or another creature and recognizing them as equally alive to you and deserving of life as you are. So, to me, that's a beautiful thing.
I think it could have been a beautiful thing. I think what they intended to do was a beautiful thing, but I think what they pulled off was like a shoebox diorama version of that beautiful thing.
I mean, that's an argument to be made. I mean, it was, and you're right, it is very Deus Ex Machina. I'm not going to argue that at all. It was definitely a Deus Ex Machina. It is definitely this fixes the whole problem. Although here's the thing, I feel like they went through the trouble to build the Rube Goldberg device.
Right, and they thought they would have another season to properly tell these stories, and they didn't.
Well, I don't know if they. I think they've been running on fumes for the last 3 seasons, because every season they've said this was the last one, and for what it's worth, they've given.
Well, then there's no excuse for like the rushed bit of tying up of loose ends here.
Well, except they wanted to. I mean, that's the excuse. The excuse is they wanted to end these stories, or to put all of the characters. Here's the thing. First off, they could murder all of the characters for our amusement. And we can imagine 100 different timelines where that is what happened.
No, but that's not the alternative that I'm sort of campaigning for. What I'm saying is the end result was great, and those satisfying endings were wonderful, but I wanted them to show their work. so that I could follow along emotionally speaking. But they didn't. They just took me. Oh, wait a second. We're okay now. But how? But why? Like,
well, I guess that
you got to suffer through a little bit to get through the prize. And if
let me just say, I'll disagree with you in the sense that I feel they did show their work. I think that everything they did, it makes sense in the context. You can go, oh, I see what they did there. Oh, I understand what they're building here. I understand. I
think what they're doing is, speaking in metaphors, you can understand what they were trying to do. That's as far as they got. I don't think, that's like, I can say, yeah, I could, but that's why I'm saying I think they could have done a better job had they at least a couple more episodes. Like, each one of these turns that we experienced, like 4 or 5 of them in this episode alone, could have been their own episode. And I know they're capable of writing a script and building moments that would have felt powerful. But as it stands, we're like, okay, yeah, but this happened. But wait, let's not go into that. Let's get to the really important thing. But this happened too. I know it's important to the story, so this happened. So now he's a good guy, okay? But this is why it's important. And you get to these wonderful moments. But then, like, I wish they would have said, let me happen upon these things. Don't tell me this guy's, turned or this guy's. That's all.
I guess there's this, and not for nothing, Mozz. Obviously, I've been watching since season 1. You did recently, you've jumped in. I think you jumped in season 5.
Yeah.
And that's not an excuse, but I think at this point, I think maybe I know more of their shorthand.
Fair enough.
And so I can
see that, yeah.
And maybe I'm giving them too much credit. Maybe I just want it to be understandable and logical, and so I'm going to give them too much of a free pass. That is also a very real possibility in this scenario, where I am being way too lenient. I should be just as harsh as Mozz and say, these guys screwed the pooch.
I don't know about that. I'm not. Yeah, I guess I don't mean for it to come off that harsh. I liked the episode; it was enjoyable. I liked where they ended up. I just expected more of them, especially considering how good the episode right before this was. He leads you into thinking, "Oh man, this is going to be so good," and it is. But like, it also seemed like the what's that yellow paperback book that people used to read? That shorthanded
Cliff
book
Notes.
for the Cliff Notes. Yeah, this was the Cliff Notes version of their finale. That's what I felt like.
Yeah, and I can see that too. I can see that, but I also kind of feel like. See, I guess this is what you're looking for. What it is. So I guess what it comes down to is this was to me a brilliant outcome. The idea of what if instead of fighting the Chronicoms, we just befriended them? Yeah. What if there's a I don't know if you watch adult, not even adult cartoons, kids cartoons that adults watch, but in Amphibia right now, which is a really great series, highly recommend it, from Disney XD. Outhouse is also good, but let's talk about Amphibia right now. There is, there's this scene where the girl that was super into Dungeons and Dragons winds up in the Newtopian kingdom where all the newts are, and the newts are super intellectual and very kind of
the salamandery, lizardy creatures.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, gotcha.
Well, because it's Amphibia, so there's 3 kingdoms. There's the frogs, the toads, and the newts. And she immediately finds herself at home because they're very, like her, they're very nerdy and they're very organized in the structures that you would expect to find in like a role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons. And so she finds herself kind of in her own element for the first time in her life. And really in their own ways, each one of the main girl characters in the story find themselves in the kingdom that exemplifies what they're best at. And in that structure, but anyway, so when there's like the 3 analysts that they're there, and one is the warmonger, one is the sneaky warmonger, and the third one is the pacifist. And it's just this idea of taking that pacifist line. What if we just talk to them? Which, for what it's worth, most times in Dungeons and Dragons, trying to talk to the dragon usually at least buys you time.
Right, you definitely lose an arm, but...
Well, not necessarily. If you just say, I have no claim on your treasure, the dragon might say, oh, okay.
Well, that's a pretty silly dragon.
Well, honestly, are you taking the treasure?
No, but why else would you be here unless you have
But it's
designs on
raining
it?
out, man. It's raining. I saw the cave. I came
You
to
know
the
how
cave.
hard it is to get to the cave? What were you doing by my cave? No people come down here because I eat people. What
Well,
possessed you?
I didn't know that. You don't have signs that say warning dragon? I'm just climbing a mountain, man. I am looking for adventure.
I don't
But
know.
man, I didn't know this treasure was guarded by a
yeah.
dragon. If I knew it was guarded by the dragon, I would have said that. Never mind, that's not worth the trouble.
Yeah,
Right?
no, yeah, I would not buy that at all. I'm eating you the first chance I get. That's a silly dragon that like has, had nothing but guys dressed like this guy show up trying to steal his treasure, and this guy's like, no, I'm just here for the free donuts and coffee.
But by that time, the wizards cast a spell, so you're good.
Fair enough.
That's the thing. It's the Bilbo Baggins trick, By the time the dragon notices you, either you've already stolen the ring of power or whatever it is, You've already figured out how to get through this without causing excessive harm to yourself or others. Because when you're dealing with that dragon, when you're dealing with that superior force and that superior firepower, the only real answer is, let's figure out another way. Because if I run at the Juggernaut, he's going to step on me. But if I figure out how to get around the Juggernaut, he's just going to run into the wall. And that's the idea here, is like Sybil's power is that all of these drones are literally drones. They haven't been given autonomy. And the idea of, what if we gave them all autonomy? What if we, if you ever saw the Star Trek episode with Hugh, where they capture the Borg and the Borg regains his sense of self. And then when he goes back, it pretty much destroys the Borg because all of a sudden assimilated into them is this idea of a sense of self. And once all the Borg start thinking for themselves, everything falls apart. So it is this idea that they essentially destroyed Sybil's power base by not having the Chronicoms respond to her. Now, they don't really show what they do with her, although I think they blow up the ship. So I guess blowing up the ship blows up Sybil, although we may see her again, because that's not the first time she's been blown up. But
yeah, and
anyway.
I'm sure she's got backups of herself stored in every decade.
Yeah, and we may see her again in Loki. That's what I'm getting at,
Yeah, no, I dig it.
I can see
She might be on 50,000 floppy disk in 1980. She might be on a CD drive in the 90s. So she might be all over the place. And then once the internet is there, she's all over in the cloud.
So,
Huh?
Optimus Prime was on one floppy disk in the 80s. So you never doubt how much real data you can store on those 80s floppy disks. Anyway, but yeah, so they do defeat Sybil in this way. And that is, and yeah, you can say, it's obviously, it cuts it to the wire. And it's one of these things where this is a Hail Mary. Everything could have gone wrong, and there was no reason to think it would go right. It happened to go right, and that's great, and that gives us our story. And then we get sort of now let's close our loop here as we go back, and we're going to, put May in the thing. We're going to put on the hazmat suits, and these are the characters we see come in from the first episode of the last season. They get the samples, although we still don't see what they do with the samples from the rocks. Although, arguably, from what we had seen, that actually literally just disables it, that once you take one of the pieces of the crystal out, it disables it. We see Flint again. Which is cool to know that Flint's still alive. So we actually have this, again, another Inhuman from the future who is now in the past as Flint, who is also, we see, going to
Coulson Academy.
Coulson Academy.
Now, is that supposed to be, and then, like, May also says, hey, if nobody was out there collecting, or Daisy says it, nobody was out there collecting people like me, where else would they go? So is he, like, Professor Xing it right now? Is that what's going on?
Well, I think that's more of a reference to what he had done before. Because he had basically been the glue that kept S.H.I.E.L.D. together after the Winter Soldier stuff. He has been trying...
I thought she was referencing that he's going out finding all the mutants and helping them.
I could see him doing that too. I would love to see that as a plot line, and maybe we will see that, Like I said, here's the thing. Um, you know, I don't know when this was supposed to air. I don't know when Falcon Winter Soldier was supposed to air. I don't know when Black Widow was supposed to air, but Black Widow takes place like this post-Infinity. No, actually, that takes place pre-Infinity War. So it's entirely possible you could see Phil Coulson in Black Widow.
Yeah.
You know, exactly.
Which will be on Disney Plus soon, too.
Well, no, that's still getting released in the theater in November.
No, they've announced it recently that it's going to be like Mulan, $30, and you can have it on your Disney Plus. Yeah, and I think they're going to do that a lot more with movies going forward because I don't know who wants to go to the movie theater. I certainly don't. I know they're opening. I
gotta double check that because I haven't heard that yet. But
I might be wrong then. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, because you know they're still doing New Mutants on the 28th. Now I am certain New Mutants is going to be available on demand like a week after the 28th. Like I figure by September 8th, just after Labor Day, it's going to be available on demand. But I think they have to give it the 2 weeks in the theaters to say, hey, we gave it 2 weeks in the theaters. You know, that the theaters weren't open, that's not our problem.
Yeah, then again, you know, what was this Trolls movie that came out a little while ago? And they decided, hey, screw the theaters, we're going to release it directly on cable. You buy it for $20. And they made, you know, like an inordinate amount of money. And people were like, wait a second, maybe this is viable.
Well, yeah, but that was also the only thing that was out there. So that's the thing is like if everyone was
but I think with those Marvel fans,
so like for example, well, what I'm going to say is like what I will say is like if they had released Black Widow at the same time as Trolls, Black Widow would have not made Trolls be a thing. You know, it's like whoever was the person who to do that, and the way they made that wager was they said Trolls is going to be, you know, it's a middle road film at best. We might hold a weekend. We might even hold 2 weekends at the box office if we don't have a lot of competition. But they knew what they were going to be, and so they knew doing $30 for on demand was going to be probably get them where they wanted to be anyway. Black Widow is a completely different set because Black Widow, first off, it's the first, you know, it's not the first female-led. It's not even that anymore, but it is the film that people have been waiting for and demanding for years. So they really feel they need to release it in the theaters, but also, and this is the thing with Mulan. Mulan is coming to Disney on demand, but Mulan also premiered in China first.
Oh, interesting.
Because China has it under control. You know, just everybody else but the U.S. has it under control. The U.S. is the people screwing up everything, as per usual. And their hope was that by the 28th, at least New York and New Jersey would have it under control enough to let people go to theaters. Unfortunately, not yet.
No.
Even though we actually arguably do have it under control, the only reason we have it under control is because we have these strict restrictions.
Right, and now we're going to open them up just so everybody can get sick again. And that's scary.
Now there are drive-ins, and honestly, if New Mutants comes to the Newark Drive-In, I would love that. I will actually pay to go see that. You know, but I haven't heard anything yet because the drive-in right now is doing second-run movies. Just opened up a drive-in in Newark. But if I see a drive-in in New Jersey has New Mutants, I will drive to go see New Mutants. I would love to see that at a drive-in. You know, I think that would be awesome. And I would be very, very down with that and very, very happy with that and very cool with that. But I have to see what they're going to do. And I haven't heard any talk about releasing to the drive-ins. Because there are a few drive-ins out there, and the drive-ins are places you could go and see and go watch, but drive-ins tend to also do as their business model second-run films. So unless Disney has been doing a lot of secret work to get them into the drive-ins to have for a first-run film at the drive-in, that would be interesting. We'll have to see what happens, but
I would prefer if they let me watch it at home.
Well, yeah, I'd prefer that too. And what I will say is they will. You know, the New Mutants will be available, like I said, by the just after Labor Day, by September 8th or 9th. definitely before the weekend. That will be available video on demand either through Disney Plus or through Hulu as an extra service, or possibly just a straight up video on demand through whatever your service, whether it's Amazon or Google Play. It'll be available for whatever period that they're going to have it available for. But and I'll pay it because I'll watch it, because if I can watch it twice, that's worth it to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because when you factor, because that's the thing, if you say $30 and you get the film for 48 hours, and it's like,
no, for the $30 for Disney Plus, at least for Mulan, they're saying if you pay $30, you have it as long as you have Disney Plus.
Wow, that's even better. See, that's even better.
That to me kind of it gives you a little bit more reason to spend the $30 because you get to keep it and watch it whenever, and it's a new release movie, so I don't mind spending $30 to get it. So if they release more movies that way, I would totally be about it.
So I would get the idea that they won't rotate it out then. So
it'll be part of your permanent library.
Disney Plus, but it'll also rotate out of Disney Plus. But if you've bought it, now it's in your vault.
Yeah.
Your personal Disney vault. So that'd be cool. I mean, I'm down with it. I'm very cool with the idea. It's just, I don't know if that's where we're at yet. But and like I said, I think that there's a lot of debate about what to do with Black Widow, especially because they're also all their other stuff is on hold. So I think like Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to have an abbreviated season, much in the way that Doom Patrol had, where it's going to end on a cliffhanger because they didn't get to finish that first season. And I think that WandaVision is completed, but I don't know yet. And honestly, I'm still waiting on What If, because that's animated, so they can do that mostly remotely. So anyway, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And these are all things we will be talking about in future episodes of Enough Said, but we're going to talk about that in a minute, because this is not last episode of Enough Said. But let's talk about where everyone is. And the one character I really want to talk about where they are now, because honestly, everyone else, I'm like, okay. The character whose outcome is best is Mac.
What is he doing again?
He's running S.H.I.E.L.D. He's the new Nick Fury.
So Deke is no longer...
No, well, Deke is running S.H.I.E.L.D. in 1983 universe.
Right. So that's like, what, 20 years before? What year are they? Oh, it's maybe 40 years.
Yes, but they left him in that universe. There's not a Deke in this universe.
Oh, right. That's so crazy. Like, I don't... That's so weird.
Well, because there are two different timelines, because that's the whole point of the quantum GPS, is it takes you across time streams. Because once you go into the quantum realm, you can move to other points in time, but you can also move across different time universes. So, but here, and this is the thing, as I said, this is taking place pre-Endgame. Because this entire season takes place in the 5-year period between the end of Infinity War and the start of Endgame. So we can have Mac running S.H.I.E.L.D. and then the snap happens and Nick Fury's back, but Nick Fury may not be running S.H.I.E.L.D. when he gets back. And this is what I want to say about this idea with Mac running S.H.I.E.L.D. I like the idea of Mac running S.H.I.E.L.D. because Mac doesn't like superhumans. I mean, he understands superhumans exist and are of value, but superhumans and robots bug him. And he doesn't just say, "Oh, well, you're a superhero, so rah rah ree, kick him in the knee." He's like, "Why should I trust a superhero? I may be married to one, but I'm not going to trust him." And it reminds me of this. Remember, you've seen DS9.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine. But did you see the episode where Q visits Deep Space Nine?
No, I have not. That sounds fascinating.
Oh, that's the best one.
I'll bet.
That is the best Q episode ever. Because essentially Q winds up there because the girl that was flirting with Picard hangs out with Q, and they're doing a whole little flirty thing. And Q is kind of being the Beyonder, where he's like, let's find out what these small beings of temporal existences do for fun. And in this moment, he runs into Avery Brooks, Captain Sisko. And he's like, doing his thing where he's like alternating the universes, and he puts them in a boxing match. And, Q's like threatening him, and all of a sudden Avery Brooks just cold cocks him and knocks him down. And Q's like, you hit me. Picard would never hit me. He's like, I'm not Picard. And it is just this, it is an iconic scene, really. This is the best scene with Q in anything, and Q is
great.
So excited about everything. It is just perfect in every way. But I like the idea of a director of S.H.I.E.L.D. who's not like saying, "Oh, let's go get superheroes and get them on our side," but a guy who says, "I don't trust you as a superhero." It's like, yeah, you got tech, that's great. I know a guy named Fitz. He can outbuild your tech, It's like,
I wonder if he'll end up becoming a bad guy or becoming like the person who wants to register mutants.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's what he's gonna do. I just like
that would be a cool heel turn for him. That'd be fun to watch.
Well, I mean, I prefer he doesn't do a heel turn, but they could have him do a heel turn. But like I said, since he has a relationship with, I could totally see.
I think that can be. Yeah, I think that can be the point through which we're asked to view the whole conversation. Does he side with the mutants, or does he side with his wife, and the trouble that causes, and the questions he'll have to ask himself. She'll have to ask herself. Who do you side with? That'd be great. That'd be great.
It would be great, but I also like the idea. I just like the idea of someone who isn't a guy who's going to be a lot more critical of Krees and Skrulls and Superhumans showing up. Because that's the thing. We see that Fury's all down with the Skrulls at the end of the whole thing, to the point where I'm wondering if when we look at Far From Home, where you almost are wondering, right, is Fury is Fury being mind controlled? Like, because for what it's worth, the Skrulls, just because the Skrulls are the victims, doesn't mean they're the good guys. It's sort of like just because you were a member of the oppressed group doesn't mean that now you get a free pass.
Right, you're not exempt from scrutiny for whatever you do.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'll give a very non-political example. As a Catholic, I was always raised to remember that a lot of people don't like Catholics. That doesn't excuse Catholics from being not good Christians. If you're a Catholic and you're treating people like jerks, then you know what? You're being a jerk. And that just the fact that people have been mean to Catholics does not excuse your being mean to other people.
Right, that's a responsible outlook.
Yeah, and hey, it's the least controversial way I could frame that statement. So,
it wasn't.
Lots of other ways I could frame it, but they were way that is. I'm not going there.
Right.
For what it's worth, there was I don't even know who it was, but apparently somebody had to deal with Cartoon Network, and then tweeted that Dolly Parton was a big-bosomed whore, though with less nice words, and basically lost his deal with Cartoon Network. And then, said a lot of other things that also explained how very angry he was about certain things. And is complaining about, oh my gosh, you've destroyed my career. It's like, no, you destroyed your career by saying something stupid out loud. No one asked your opinion on it. And you should have known, first off, don't pick on Dolly Parton.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Exactly. It's like, no matter how much you disagree with what she's saying, just say, oh, Dolly. Because, Dolly.
Right. She's a national treasure. She's an icon. She's a piece of our history.
Yeah. And honestly, And if you actually read what she said is not nearly as controversial as people might want to say it. People are glomming onto it because it seems to say what they want Dolly Parton to say.
Right.
That's technically not exactly what she said.
People love making people into the enemy they wish they had.
Yeah, or the hero they wish they had. So that's the circular logic of it. And
Yeah.
But this guy decided, and that's the thing. It's like you're a young animator or an old animator, because I guess he's in his 30s, which isn't old because I'm 45. But that you're this animator who just got his big break, and you decide now is the time to wade in full force into politics, to shout down something. And it's
Right.
like,
That's why you got into cartoons, right?
Yeah, to be fair, it's like, but anyway, so I don't even know how we got onto this topic, but yeah, people dig their own holes sometimes. But yeah, everybody else, we see that Korra and Quake and Souza are now the Astro ambassadors for Sword, and it's clearly meant to be Sword. That's the thing, is that clearly Sword's a thing. They're part of Sword, seeking out new lives and new civilizations. Totally going where no person has gone before. And where no Terran has gone before. Because they're all Terrans. That's one thing we can say about them. And that's cool. Which also, again, like I said, because this all takes place pre-Endgame, it suggests that this is where everything gets built out. So that when Fury comes back after Endgame, this is why there's already a space station, there's already this, there's already that. That everyone has been building things in his absence. And I like that. And I like the idea of Mac being the guy that built that. So that's important to me. We do see some of the people that we thought were dead are now back alive because they died in an alternate timeline. We get to see an LMD in the field, which was nice. And yeah, I liked those aspects. I was a little, I don't know, the idea of Fitz and Simmons being retired. It's one of those things like nobody retires in superheroes,
especially with brains like theirs. I guess they're so preoccupied with the baby that they don't have time to feed the hunger of inventing and of figuring out problems. I guess they have enough of a problem to figure out.
I guess my take on it is like they're still doing all that stuff, but
right.
They're just not in the field. They're not doing field work anymore.
Right. I'm sure they're providing support to Coulson because he still seems to have secret plans that he's working on, and I'm sure they all do.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
The least impressive. Well, I won't say the least impressive, but the idea of May goes to be a teacher. But then again, I think that's what May wanted to do. Is just May never wanted to get back behind the bus. In fact, she even makes the thing about that she's gonna fly. And says that used to be all I did.
Yeah.
I just.
Well, I mean, now that she has empathy, she's probably a really, really good teacher.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
and I think part of her, pretending not to like it was so she can keep up her image as this stern figure, but secretly she really loves it. That's the feeling I get.
Yeah, and I think that's but like I said, I think that's good. And like I said, I liked seeing Flint. I want to see more of Flint. Flint is an interesting character.
And that's the thing. She's she's working. She's a teacher. She's a professor, but she's a professor at the Coulson Academy. Mm-hmm. So basically, she's teaching people how to be superheroes. So
exactly,
right.
And it's also kind of interesting that now it's like, okay, we're actively recruiting Inhumans.
Yeah.
Probably going to be actively recruiting some mutants, because it was implied mutants existed in this universe.
Yes, indeed.
That was actually implied back in when we first met Garrett.
Right.
And he's trying to find the clairvoyant.
Oh.
And they find this guy who was this great predictor of outcomes. He was, made millions in the stock market. He was kind of confined to a wheelchair. It was an interesting storyline. Turned out to be a ruse. But the idea that, there were it was strongly implied that there were metahumans in this world outside of it. And for what it's worth, we have seen characters already, like Angar the Screamer, and a few others, who were clearly people who had powers, but with no origin of their powers. So, and I believe Angar the Screamer is actually technically a mutant. And of course, we're going to be seeing, they believe we're going to be seeing Billy Kaplan and, I forget the Quicksilver character's name, but Scarlet Witch's children in the upcoming series. So, there's a lot going.
Quicksilver her brother, though?
Quicksilver is her brother, but when she had children, one had Scarlet Witchy powers, the other one had Quicksilver powers.
Oh.
So she had twins too, and each one had the same powers as. They're called Speed and Wiccan.
Oh.
And I'm trying to remember because I know Billy is Billy Kaplan because he was adopted. I believe it was adopted in the mainstream thing. I don't remember. Tommy's the other one. Billy and Tommy. And then Billy's in a relationship with Teddy, and Tommy is in a relationship with Prodigy at the moment. We'll see if that lasts. But anyway, I was less impressed by that. I was like, But anyway, it all works out. Although I guess there's a lot you could throw in with that too. But as it played out, it was really an interesting idea and interesting stories that have been played out here. But we'll see what's going to happen. And Yo-Yo's just out in the field being a super speedster, where she says, "Don't even bother slowing down," and then she.
I thought that was pretty cool. That was really cool.
Well, speedsters are cool. That's the thing, and that's what I get to is I am certain all of these actors, all these characters, just like the characters and actors from Netflix, I don't think we've seen the last of them.
Yeah.
Because they're all too powerful to leave on the table. They were always written to be part of this universe. So to take them out of the universe, I think is just silly. Marvel has all their rights back. They have the character rights back. They have the story rights back. The stories were produced under the auspices of the MCU. They were always produced by Marvel Studios. And the fact of the matter is, they can ignore whatever continuity they don't like. If they decide, no, that's not the continuity now. The actors aren't going to say, oh no, that's canon. They're going to no. We just did like 2 time travel stories in a row. Nothing's canon. And that has been the final episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I had one other thing that kind of bugged me, like when Fitz came back and they tell him, "Oh, Enoch's dead." He's like, "Oh, all right. Anybody got a sandwich?" Or like he just seems so not bothered by it, and like I thought that would land a bit heavier on him.
Well, but then again, if he's been aware of what was going to happen, he knew that was a very strong possibility.
Yeah, but still, I don't know. It just seemed like that's your best friend, and even if he wasn't, pulled you out of a jam several times, and he considered you his best friend.
Yeah, I mean that for what it's worth is the crux of the biscuit. Is Fitz was Enoch's best friend. That doesn't necessarily mean it's reciprocal, and maybe Fitz a jerk.
Yeah, a jerk. Okay, that's a good word.
Truth is truth, and Fitz, for what it's worth, we know has a sociopathic side.
That's fair.
We know there's a part of him that is not bound to other people except for those that are central to him. And for what it's worth, maybe he does mourn Enoch in his own way, but then again, he's already had decades with Enoch, and he is.
Which is why.
Well, he's had years with him. Enough to have a baby that's about 8. So, he's had a long time with Enoch. He traveled through space and time with Enoch.
All the more reason to, miss the guy.
Well, but that he doesn't have an emotional reaction doesn't mean that he doesn't miss him.
I guess.
That's the thing. It's like sometimes we can sometimes we can get obsessed with people telegraphing their emotions. But, is he the guy who telegraphs any emotion?
Yeah, I know, but the kind of show this is, it's not like, one of a lot of nuance and subtlety. It's pretty much, on its sleeve for what it is, and then all of a sudden at this one point they're going to try to take a super sophisticated turn and let him internalize his pain rather than...
But then again, I think what I'll say is the only real emotion we see from Fitz throughout the entire series is usually anger.
Huh.
We don't see him show
True.
compassion. We mostly see him show anger. The only person that he really shows love for, or even sorrow for if he's afraid, is Simmons. But even that, it's like mostly what we see is him willing to sacrifice for Simmons. We don't see tenderness from him. We see anger and...
urgency. Always urgency.
Yeah, a lot of urgency. And if that's what we see here, it's like, Enoch's dead. And he's like, Enoch's dead? Oh. I mean, he may understand, and again, it's like, he understood that was a possibility, he understood what the reality was. He understood, and, when it comes down to it, when Simmons actually comes to understand what's going on, she realizes, oh, he's the one that's how he dies,
Yeah.
That's the thing and he would have to kill himself to do it. But of course, he's more than happy too, because and again, for what it's worth, he's lived 8,000 years or 10,000 years or 100,000 years. I don't know how long they've said. He hung out with Neanderthals.
Right.
So Neanderthals didn't show up last Tuesday. So I think Neanderthals probably predate the pyramids. So we're talking like 10,000 years ago. He's been on this planet hanging out with the humanoids. And so he has lived a very long and full life. And if he can end his life saving his friends, why would he not?
Yeah. Yeah, Neanderthals were around 130, they say about between 40 and 130 years ago. 40,000 and 130,000 years ago. Yeah. So maybe Enoch was around for a ridiculously long time.
Yeah, well, he is I get the feeling he's been around maybe just after the dinosaurs. I don't think he's ever mentioned knowing dinosaurs.
I mean, come on, that would be so cool.
But we know that essentially Chronocoms can theoretically run for millions of years, arguably. And the idea that, he, whether it was 40,000 years or 130,000 years ago, he hung out with them, because I would have to assume that this is basically when human beings started being interesting enough to record. The dinosaurs never did much,
Right, it couldn't possibly have been called anthropology before we got here, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. You needed someone who was sentient, and I guess and maybe the dinosaurs eventually got to that down in the savage lands with the lizard beings, but it took them a little longer, so we may see the lizard people eventually, but that was, there's no reason to send an Enoch until that time.
Right.
But yeah, so that
or maybe he got here and said, hey, I wonder, he can obviously travel back in time, right?
Well, no, he couldn't at that point.
Oh, so he couldn't have just gotten here and decided, hey, let me see what the past was like with these folks, and then just decided to traipse around the timeline.
No, I think he was sent here at a certain point and spent, hundreds of thousands of years here.
Wow.
Well, because, that was what it was, that was his function. That's what the Chronocoms did. Honestly, I still want to know who the heck built the Chronocoms, It's like the Transformers. Who built the Transformers? It's like...
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me. It's like, did they eventually learn our language, or were they already speaking our language?
Oh,
were they designed with us in mind, or did, when he get to this planet, he take on the form, like the Transformers did in Beast Wars, did he take on the form of whatever creature was predominant at the time? Or go through the world, one day being a lion or a saber-toothed tiger, one day going and living with the mammoth, saying, hey, which one of these species is interesting enough to study?
Well, yeah, I would imagine, again, like I said, it's not anthropology until we show up. I think it's when they first identified this as a planet that was developing sentience, or that had sentient beings on it. So at that point,
Neanderthals, we were worth studying.
Well, yeah, Neanderthals, I would say probably Homo habilis.
Fair
Maybe
enough.
Homo erectus, one of the earlier ancestors probably with the time. If he's hanging out with Neanderthals, I mean, maybe the Neanderthals were oh, wow, look at those complex tools they're making.
Yeah.
Look at those burial rituals they have. These guys are worth watching.
That's interesting.
Although it's interesting that he would come to watch the Neanderthals, and then there'd be an evolutionary dead end, and then it's like, oh, here's everybody else. So that would be funny. But, I would imagine that, because the Neanderthals and most of civilization started to form around the same time. The Neanderthals are an offshoot of mainline humanity from Africa. So humanity came...
Or did we have a common ancestor?
Well, we all had a common ancestor.
No. Well, I mean, are they an offshoot of us?
Well, it's assumed that tool use, which is usually the big marker, stone tool, the Paleolithic age, the first Stone Age, starts in Africa, and then the Neanderthals are an offshoot of those that went north, and then had a separate evolutionary line. So the argument really is that, again, like I said, Homo habilis or Homo erectus, possibly Australopithecine, were the first ones to use tools. That if the Australopithecines were the first to use tools.
So what I'm saying is, did we share a common ancestor with Neanderthals, or were they another concurrent branch of humanity that failed, and ours was the one that...
No. Humans and Neanderthals are basically like pit bulls and poodles. Gotcha. We're essentially the same species, but one got bred differently in its environment.
Yeah, because I hear people talk about it humans and Neanderthals, interbred at some point. So I'm
they did interbred in the same way that,
So they were concurrent lines of an experimental, nature's experiment, not But
the idea is that Neanderthals and Neanderthals, even as a species, how different they were from humans is debatable, but they exist. The Homo sapiens, essentially, Neanderthals evolved and then Homo sapiens evolved out of a separate line. But they were close enough that they definitely could interbreed.
Right.
Because we find their bones very next to each other.
So we were different offshoots that were concurrent.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to figure. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's like poodles and pit bulls. So if you have a poodle and a pit bull, they don't look very similar, but they're actually the exact same animal. It's true. I mean, it just is. Poodles and pit bulls. I'm talking standard poodles here, to make it a little easier for your mind to get through. But like a poodle and a pit bull are essentially, in fact, actually, from a standard poodle, the pit bull is actually the smaller dog. But they are different. They are each have been bred by their environment, and arguably that's why different parts of the world have dramatically different designs of humans, even though we're all the same species, just that certain traits became dominant in certain areas because of the environment in that area. All the same species, but it's different designs, in the same way that poodles and pit bulls are the same animal, just different designs, And if you try to say that a pit bull is better than a poodle or a poodle is better than a pit bull, obviously you're wrong.
Right. No.
And then, if you actually get them back to being wolves, that's the best place you can be. So everything should just get back to being wolves. But anyway.
I don't know. I like my Chihuahua. I wouldn't like it if there were no Chihuahuas.
Oh, that's true, too. And that's the thing. It's but, of course, that's, that's a whole other conversation about, having a pet. But anyway, how did we get here? Oh, yes, Enoch. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
This is the.
This is a lot of after show, quite frankly. But you know, this show deserves an after show. This has been 7 seasons of amazing stories.
Right, and I think just as much as the narrative is interesting and worth talking about, I think what makes these shows interesting and why Marvel is so interesting to people is because it does cause you to question really, really important facets of our relationship to the world. And it serves a purpose in that regard. Aside from just being entertainment and placating us, it does serve a purpose to have us question ourselves and our relationship to the world in interesting ways. And that's also what the show is aiming to do, I think.
I couldn't agree more. And on that note, let's call this a night for the final episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But not the final episode of Enough Said. Because
Indeed.
in 1 week's time, hopefully, you will be here again to listen to us talk about the first, well, it might not have been the first of the Marvel shorts, but the first chronologically of the Marvel shorts. In association with our show over on Full Stream Ahead, where we are currently rewatching Season 2 of Agent Carter, we're going to do the Agent Carter short. And that will be our first discussion of the Marvel shorts as we're waiting for something else to talk about here on Enough Said. So I highly recommend everyone go out there. I believe the Agent Carter short is
on Disney Plus.
It is on Disney Plus. I'm trying to remember what movie it's on. I'm trying to remember if that's on Iron Man. It might be on Iron Man. No, it can't be on Iron Man because it had to be after Captain America. I think it's on the Iron Man 2. That's right. On the Iron Man 2.
You would think it would be on one of the Captain America films.
No, I don't think so. Because I think actually what's on the Captain America film might be a funny thing happened on the way to New Mexico.
What is that?
Oh, that's the first Phil Coulson one.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one either.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. That is why. That is just a little side note. That's where they blew their budget, and so that's why the third one of the Associate is just Phil and I forget the other agent, but the bald-headed agent just sitting in a diner talking about setting up Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross and who they can send to really annoy him. So yeah, but we're going to be doing as many of the Marvel shorts as we can. Unfortunately, the one we really want to talk about isn't on Disney Plus, which is Hail to the King. And
that's the Mandarin one, right?
That's the Mandarin one.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one.
That shows up. We may have to track that one down just to do.
I'm sure we'll
be completists. But
yeah, I found it once before. I'm sure I'll be able to find it again.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen illegal copies. Don't tell anyone on YouTube. But
right.
You know, where someone's like holding it's just the video equivalent of holding a tape recorder up to your DVD player. But but yeah, but we're gonna do the Marvel shorts when the when the Disney Plus Marvel films shows start dropping. That's what you're gonna find here on Enough Said, and various other Marvel content that me and Mozz decide we're gonna watch. That's what Enough Said is going to be going forward. But we're starting with the MCU. We want to stay as close to the MCU as possible. As much as I want to go back and watch those Hulk movies where they tried to build the MCU before the MCU, we're going to try and stick to the MCU as much as we can because that is what built Enough Said. But we may branch out as we need to because that's what Enough Said's about. Anyway, you've been listening to this show for quite a while. Your ears may be hurting because you're probably listening to this on substandard audio. And in which case, I can only implore you to go to tweakedaudio.com. Tweakedaudio.com has amazing headsets and audio equipment that you need to listen to your podcasts. And if you use the promo code Southgate, you'll get a discount on your purchase. Likewise, if you're not that interested in podcasts at this point or your headphones are just fine, why don't you go over to Hunt a Killer and challenge your brain for once. help Michelle Gray. I almost said Macy Gray. Help Michelle Gray solve a cold case by having her send you a bunch of clues. She doesn't need them. She's just going to send them to you. It'll be a bunch of clues, a bunch of clippings, a bunch of weird items that you have to figure out what the heck they're even supposed to be. And then you're going to figure out who the actual killer was. It's like having an escape room delivered to your house every month. And if none of that interests you, that's fine. Just go down to our show notes, find that Amazon link, go to Amazon, buy whatever the heck you want. I don't care. That's what Amazon's there for. They've got tons of stuff. You buy it, you use our link. We actually get, something from that. I have no idea what, but it's nice. And while you're there, check out Pod Life the Book. Pod Life the Book is the book written by the Southgate Media Group. Just talking about what it is, what it means to be a podcaster, why we bother to do this nonsense, why it makes us happy in a way that we can't quite describe except in a book. So please go do all those things. And if you are interested in any of it, or if you're interested in none of it, and just want to talk to us, me and Mozz, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Poz once did, do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet something. I don't know what yet. That's one of the things you can tweet at me, at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Ding!
Thank you, Mozz. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that has been all of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that we have to talk about. And so when we're out of things to talk about, all we can say is, 'nuff said.
'Nuff said.